guys, it's Shara from Woodshop Diaries, and today I'm going to show you how I made this super simple wall shelf from some 2x2s and some scrap plywood. So if you're ready to get building, let's go. I love building large furniture, but every now and then it's fun to tackle a smaller project and get rid of some of my scrap pile. So I grabbed some 2x2s that I had left over after making the kids' house bed that I built recently, and a few random scrap pieces of plywood, and I brainstormed how I could make something useful from both of them. And this is what I came up with. These came together super easily, and I've got the full plans over on the blog post linked below for you, but I'll show you how they came together here. So the first thing that I did was cut down my boards into useful sizes. So I squared off the edges of these 2x6 scraps, then ripped them down to make 2x2s to use for the shelf frames. Once I had them ripped down, I trimmed them to length on the miter saw. The cut list and detailed plans are linked in the blog post tutorial below if you're interested in the exact sizes that I cut here. I've learned the hard way over the years that it's a lot easier to sand before assembling anything, so I gave these pieces a quick sanding before attaching the frame together. Now you can use all kinds of fancy joinery techniques here, but since I was painting these frames and this is just a simple wall shelf, I just used some wood glue and some 3-inch wood screws to attach the frame together. I made sure to pre-drill the holes before driving the screws though, because 2x2s split really easily if you don't pre-drill. Also in the plans, you'll notice that I made these frame pieces so that the back pieces are spaced apart about 16-inch center so they can easily screw into the wall studs once they're complete. Once the frame was assembled and before the glue dried completely, I checked that the frame was square. If it was a little off, it would be easy to kind of shift the frame one way or the other to get it square if the glue was still wet. But once it's dry, it kind of is what it is. So I puttied the screw holes with wood putty, and while that dried, I moved on to making the actual shelf part of the project. So for these, I cut 2 3/4-inch plywood scraps to the length that I wanted my shelves to be on the miter saw. Then I cut them down to the width that I wanted on my table saw. But it's been a while since I cleaned out my table saw, so when I turned it on, the dust that came out was a little too much. So I took a short break to clean that out. And of course, then the vacuum was full, so it needed to be emptied as well. Back to work, Lou. And finally, we were back in business. So at this point now, I cut the shelves to the width that I wanted on my table saw. Now, you could leave these shelves as is as just a flat, simple board, but I wanted to add a little lip around the edges to keep things from rolling off the shelves. So I ripped down some thin strips of plywood to attach around the edges. If you wanted, you could totally use 1x2s or 1x3s for this, but I had plenty of thin strips of plywood that I needed to get rid of, so that's what I use here. And since these edges will be exposed around the top of the lip, I glued on some edge banding before cutting them down to size. Once I had these strips edge banded, I moved back to the miter saw and adjusted the miter angle to 45 degrees. I cut to fit pieces around the bottom shelf boards, just like shown here, using mitered corners. And once I made sure that all the pieces fit well together, I gave everything a good sanding before attaching all of the pieces. Again, you could use fancy joinery methods here, but I just glued and brad nailed the lip pieces around the shelf. It's a scrap wood project, it's really not meant to be complicated. Also, ignore the tractor pulling back into the shop. It was a nice day, so Danny took it for a spin around the yard while I blasted some Miley Cyrus on the radio. Be sure to stay tuned for the next video because who knows what I'll be singing next. Once the shelves were assembled, I painted the frames black and stained the shelves between coats. To add a little industrial detail to this project, I attached these decorative L brackets on the front corners of the shelves. This is a totally optional step. I just really like the look of the added detail. Once the paint and the stain was dry, I centered the shelves on the frame and attached the shelves to the frame through the top of each shelf using some wood screws. Because I spaced the back frame pieces about 16 inches apart, these were super easy to hang on the wall because there's about 16 inches between typical wall studs. So to hang these, I simply found the studs and lined the back pieces along 2 of them. Pre-drilled holes through the 2x2s, made sure it was level, and then used 3-inch wood screws to drive them into the studs. No need for anchors, and you don't really notice the screws. Hashtag prior planning. And that was it. Scrap wood to wall shelf in no time. So if you're looking for a good weekend project or something to help you control your scrap wood pile, head over to the blog post linked in the description for the full plans and step-by-step tutorial to build you a set or 2 of these. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on what's coming next. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, happy building!